The day I turned 18, I wasn't expecting a party. I wasn't expecting balloons, a cake, or even a birthday card. My mom had never been the sentimental type. But I did expect something. Maybe a simple, happy birthday, maybe a conversation about college, or even a little bit of guidance on what came next. Instead, I got this. She sat me down at the kitchen table, took a sip of her coffee, and said, "You're an adult now. My job is done. It's time for you to figure life out on your own." I let out a nervous laugh. "Wait, what?" She sighed, rubbing her temples like I was already exhausting her. "You can't stay here anymore. You need to grow up. Be independent. It's time to go." At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She handed me a garbage bag, not even a suitcase but a garbage bag, and told me to start packing. I didn't have savings. No car. No college dorm waiting for me. I had just finished high school, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But none of that mattered to her. By the end of the week, I was standing outside with my garbage bag full of clothes and a backpack of random things I grabbed in a panic. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She just closed the door. And I was on my own. For a while, I couch surfed at friends' houses, feeling like an unwanted guest. I crashed in a car when I finally got one. I lived off cheap fast food, worked crappy jobs, and struggled to make just enough for rent when I finally found a tiny rundown apartment. It was hell. But I survived. Little by little, I figured it out. I worked my way up from dead-end jobs, saved where I could, and scraped together a life. And every step forward, every milestone, every little success I had, I did it without her. I learned how to pay bills, how to fix my car, how to cook, how to take care of myself. Not because she taught me. Not because she helped me. But because I had no choice. And I made a promise to myself. I would never need her again. Then, years later, she texted me. It was a normal day. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey sweetheart, can we talk?" I stared at the screen. It had been years. She had made it clear back then I was on my own. So why was she reaching out now? I didn't respond. 2 days later, another message came in. "I really need to talk to you. It's important." A cold, uneasy feeling crept up my spine. I debated ignoring it again, but something about the way she said, "important," made me pause. Finally, I responded, "What do you want?" The reply came almost instantly. "I need you to come home." I read it again. And again. My home? The place she kicked me out of without hesitation? That was never my home. Something was off. I replied with one word, "Why?" This time it took her longer to respond. When she did, it made my blood boil. "I don't want to talk about it over text. Can we meet in person?" I clenched my jaw. No apology. No explanation. Just a vague request like she was doing me a favor. After all these years, now she wanted something? And when I finally found out what it was, I couldn't believe the audacity. I stared at my phone, rereading the message over and over. "I need you to come home." Home. She really had the audacity to call it that. I sat back, gripping my phone, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Anger. Confusion. A little bit of curiosity. She hadn't said a single word to me in years. Not when I was sleeping in my car. Not when I was working 2 jobs just to afford rent. Not when I was struggling through the hardest years of my life. Now, suddenly she needed me? I wasn't stupid. People like her don't reach out unless they want something. But I needed to hear her say it. I typed out a response. "Why?" I watched the typing bubble pop up, then disappear, then pop up again. She was hesitating. Finally, a message came through. "I don't want to talk about it over text. Can we meet in person?" Of course. She didn't want to say it outright. I exhaled slowly, debating my next move. Every instinct told me to ignore her. Block the number. Walk away. But a small, petty part of me wanted to know exactly what she wanted, and make her say it to my face. So I agreed. We met at a small diner the next afternoon. I walked in and spotted her immediately. She looked older. More tired. But I wasn't about to feel sorry for her. Not after everything. She smiled when she saw me, but I didn't return it. I slid into the booth across from her, arms crossed. "All right. I'm here. Talk." She sighed, stirring the sugar into her coffee. "It's good to see you. You look..." She trailed off, searching for the right word. I raised an eyebrow. "Alive." "Yeah, I managed." Her smile faltered. "You don't have to be so cold." I let out a sharp laugh. "You threw me out with a garbage bag. Forgive me if I'm not thrilled to see you." She sighed again. "I didn't throw you out. I was trying to teach you independence." "Independence?" I repeated, my voice rising. You mean when you shoved me out the door with no job, no money, no plan? And didn't check in once? That independence? She waved a hand. You figured it out, didn't you? You should be thanking me. I stared at her, completely speechless. Thanking her. For abandoning me. I clenched my fists under the table, forcing myself to stay calm. Why am I here? I asked, my voice flat. What do you want? She hesitated again. Then finally she dropped the act. She folded her hands on the table and said, I need you to move back home. Silence. I blinked. What? She sighed, looking down. I could really use the help. I almost laughed. Help. The same woman who had zero problem kicking me out when I needed her was now asking me to come back? I leaned back in my seat. Let me get this straight. You kicked me out with nothing, ignored me for years, and now you want me to just come home like nothing happened? Why? She fidgeted with her coffee cup. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. She sighed again, a habit I was really starting to hate. Then she finally admitted it. I can't afford the house on my own anymore. I felt my jaw tighten. There it was. She didn't want to reconnect. She didn't want to fix things. She needed a free roommate. I let out a slow, bitter laugh. Wow. Her eyes snapped up. What's so funny? I shook my head. It's just funny how family only matters to you when you need something. She scoffed. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I kicked you out for no reason. I did what was best for you. No, you did what was easiest for you. She pursed her lips, but I wasn't finished. You didn't want a responsibility anymore, so you threw me out. And now, years later, you want me back. Not because you miss me, not because you care, but because you need help paying your bills. Her expression hardened. I gave you everything for 18 years. You owe me. I almost choked. I owe you. Owe her for what? Being born? Being left to struggle alone? I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. I don't owe you anything. She crossed her arms. Oh, so you're just going to let me suffer? Like she let me suffer? I pushed back my chair. I guess so. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. You made me figure life out on my own. It's only fair you do the same. Her eyes widened. You're seriously going to walk away from me? From your own mother? I stared down at her, completely numb. You did it first. And with that, I turned and walked away. She didn't follow me. She didn't call my name. She just sat there. For once, she was the one being left behind. And I didn't feel guilty at all. I walked out of that diner and didn't look back. I expected my phone to blow up with texts. Maybe a dramatic voicemail, some guilt-tripping messages, or at least one last attempt to manipulate me. But there was nothing. No texts. No calls. Radio silence. For a second, I wondered if she had actually given up. Then she showed up at my door. It was a normal evening. I was exhausted after work, scrolling mindlessly on my phone when I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was her. She was standing there, arms crossed, looking impatient, like I was the one who owed her an explanation. I considered not answering, just pretending I wasn't home. But I knew my mom. If I didn't open the door, she'd keep coming back. She'd escalate. She always did. I sighed and pulled the door open, leaning against the frame. What do you want? She frowned. Is that how you greet your mother? I stared at her, unimpressed. The mother who kicked me out? Yeah, it is. Her face twitched. Look, I came to talk. We already talked. We're done. She exhaled sharply. You're being so stubborn. I crossed my arms. And you're wasting my time. Get to the point. Her jaw clenched, and for a second I saw the old anger in her eyes, the same look she gave me right before she threw me out. But this time, I wasn't a scared teenager anymore. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Fine. I'll say it. I need your help. I can't afford the house anymore. I let out a short, humorless laugh. I know. You already told me. I thought you'd come to your senses by now. I raised an eyebrow. Come to my senses? Yes, she snapped. You're my child. You should want to help me. I tilted my head. You didn't want to help me when I needed you. She groaned. You keep bringing that up. You don't get it, do you? I had to teach you independence. That's what parents do. I blinked at her, completely stunned. Kicking your kid out with no money, no plan, and no support isn't teaching independence. It's called abandonment. She scoffed. Oh, don't be so dramatic. You survived, didn't you? I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. You're right. I did. Without you. Silence. She looked away for a second, shifting on her feet like she didn't know what to say. Then she sighed. I know you're upset, but I really need you right now. There it was. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I realize I hurt you. Not, I regret what I did. Just, I need you. That's all it ever was with her. I wasn't a son. I was a resource. I took a step forward, looking her right in the eye. Let me ask you something. She frowned. What? If I had failed after you kicked me out, if I had ended up homeless, completely lost, would you have helped me? She opened her mouth, then hesitated. That split second of hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Her face twisted in frustration. Why do you have to be like this? Like what? I asked. Independent. Her nostrils flared. Fine. If you don't want to help me, just say it. I held up my hands. Okay. I don't want to help you. Her face dropped. She actually looked shocked. I don't know if she thought I was bluffing, or if she really believed she could guilt me into it. But for the first time she had no control over me. She scoffed. You'll regret this. I shrugged. I doubt it. She shook her head in disgust. After everything I did for you, this is how you treat me? I gave her a long, hard look. After everything you did to me, you really expected anything else? Her mouth opened slightly like she had something to say, but she didn't. She just turned around and stormed off. I watched her walk to her car, half expecting her to spin around for one last attempt at guilt-tripping me. But she didn't. She got in, slammed the door, and drove away. And for the first time in my life, I was completely, unapologetically free. And it felt amazing. I thought that was the end of it. When she stormed off from my apartment, I expected that was the last time I'd ever see her. And for a few weeks it seemed like I was right. No texts. No calls. Just silence. For the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. But I should have known better. Because people like my mom don't just disappear. They don't accept consequences. They don't apologize. They escalate. It started small. A call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Then another. And another. Then came the texts, but not from her. Instead, it was from relatives I barely spoke to. Hey, your mom told me you won't talk to her. She's really struggling. Just hear her out. Family is forever. You'll regret shutting her out. She's your mother. She did her best. Just talk to her. I stared at my screen, boiling with anger. She had told them her version of the story, of course. She probably cried, played the victim, made it seem like I was some cruel, heartless child who had abandoned his poor, helpless mother. Never mind that she threw me out with nothing. Never mind that she hadn't cared whether I lived or died. She was losing control of me, so she sent the flying monkeys. I ignored every single message. Then a week later she showed up at my job. I had just finished my shift when I walked outside and saw her, standing by my car. Arms crossed. Tapping her foot. Like she had been waiting. My stomach dropped. I glanced around, half expecting her to start yelling, to cause a scene. But instead she just stared at me with this deep, disapproving glare. Like I had done something wrong. Like she was my mother, disappointed in her rebellious child. I let out a slow breath, walked up to my car, and unlocked the door without even acknowledging her. But she wasn't having that. She stepped in front of me, blocking my door. Are you really going to ignore me? I clenched my jaw. Move. She scoffed. That's all you have to say to me? After everything I've done for you? I turned my head slowly, looking her dead in the eye. Everything you've done for me? Her lip twitched. Yes. I raised you. I fed you. I put a roof over your head for 18 years. I let out a bitter laugh. And the second I turned 18 you kicked me out with a garbage bag. She waved a hand. And you survived, didn't you? You should be thanking me for teaching you independence. I inhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. She really didn't get it. She never would. What do you want? I asked, voice flat. Her face softened slightly, like she thought I was giving in. I just want to fix things. We're family, sweetheart. That word. Family. She threw me out like trash. Ignored me for years. And now, when she needed something, she was suddenly pulling the family card? I crossed my arms. You don't want to fix things. You want me to move in so I can help pay your bills. Her expression darkened. Oh, so you think you're too good to help your own mother now? There it was. The switch. The fake warmth was gone. I stared at her, completely numb. You only want me back because you need something from me? That's not true, she snapped. I miss you. I tilted my head. Funny. You didn't miss me when I was struggling to survive on my own. You didn't check in when I was homeless. You didn't care when I had nothing. She said nothing. Because she had nothing to say. I exhaled, shaking my head. You don't want me. You want a free roommate. A second income. Someone to fix the mess you made. She scoffed. You're being ridiculous. No, I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing you for exactly what you are. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I gave you everything. I narrowed my eyes. You gave me nothing. Silence. Then finally she snapped. You are so ungrateful. After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me. She was seething now. I sacrificed so much for you. Do you think raising a kid is easy? Do you think I had an obligation to keep taking care of you forever? I let out a slow breath. No. But I think you had an obligation to not throw me away like garbage the second I became inconvenient. She scoffed. One day you'll regret this. One day you'll come crawling back, and when you do, don't expect me to be waiting. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. I won't. I stepped past her, got into my car, and drove away. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there watching me leave. For once, she was the one being left behind. I wish I could say cutting her off was easy. That once I walked away, I never thought about her again. But walking away from a toxic parent isn't like flipping a switch. There were nights I felt guilty. Nights I doubted myself. Nights I wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I reminded myself. Where was she when I needed a home? Where was she when I needed support? Where was she when I had nothing? She was nowhere. So that's exactly where I left her. Now, years later, I have a stable job, a home, and a life I built on my own. And my mom? I don't know. I don't check. I don't ask. Because she made it clear, I wasn't her responsibility. So now, she's not mine. And for the first time in my life, I feel truly free.